These people have dressed up to win cars, cash, and amazing prizes, and they've come to the Tropicana Las Vegas. It's time for Let's Make a Deal. Now here's TV's big dealer, Wayne Brady.
Hey everybody, welcome to Let's Make a Deal. I'm your host, Wayne Brady.
Hey Sarah, how are you? And you are shalom. Peace. What's up?
What's good?
Oh, easy. Peace. So Sarah, what do you do? I say that if you did that to somebody on probation, they're leaving town. They're like, she's not gonna catch me. And shalom, what do you do, sir?
I am in college to become a rabbi.
What are you right now, though? What is this?
Carrot. Also carrot top.
Stick to rabbinical school. That's cool. I'm very happy for you. Congratulations. Have fun. Have a seat, sweetheart.
Okay, Richard.
She's going Bombay.
Thank you. And today's series begins, Let's Make a Deal. Wouldn't it be great if the contestants on Jeopardy acted that way also? No. They're so glum. But anyway, they win nothing. Anyway, today is Let's Make a Deal, because that's what God offers to us. And offer today, we hear in the New Testament, let's make a deal, and God has a deal for us. And the first deal he makes we have with Noah, right? We all know the story of Noah, do we not?
Yes.
Oh, that doesn't look like Noah to me. But in Noah, let's see how well you know it. For example, did all the animals come in pairs? No. The worms came in apples. Oh, forget it. Anyway, archaeologists say that Noah probably got milk from the cows. What did he get from the ducks? Quackers. What kind of lights did they use on the ark? What kind of lights? Floodlights. You know something? I think you better leave the jokes to you, Father Frank. Let's skip this from now on. Anyway, no, it's okay. But anyway, Noah, and it's I say God makes a deal with Noah. It's called, he makes a covenant with Noah. There's 7 covenants in the scriptures. This is one of the 7. We'll look at another one next week with Abraham. But this is the distinct part about this covenant. He makes it not only with human beings, but it's the only covenant in the scripture that he makes also that includes the animals. All living creatures receive this gift, this blessing from God. It's the only covenant in the scriptures that includes animals. All right? Now, what exactly is a covenant? We hear the word tossed about, like we hear the word consubstantial with the Father in the Creed, and what exactly that is, I don't know, but we're supposed to say it. The same with a covenant. What exactly is a covenant? Let's go over that. Because it's closely related to what we're more familiar with, which is the contract. We know what a contract is. 2 parties, A and B, have an agreement. A will do this, and B will do this, and they sign a contract, right? So you buy a house, buy a car, you pay this money, you get to keep the house. You don't pay the money, you don't get to keep the house. You don't get to keep the car. That's a contract. You break the contract. There's 2 things the parties have to do. A will do this, B will do this. If A doesn't keep his end of the bargain, B doesn't have to keep his end of the bargain. The contract is null and void. Now, a covenant is very similar to a contract. It's between 2 parties. Both make an agreement. They will do, I will do this, and you will do that. But the big difference is this. In a covenant, it says this. If, for example, A does not keep their part of the deal, part of the bargain, part of the agreement, B will still keep his or her agreement. You say, well, wait, that's not right. You mean if A doesn't do what they promised to do, B will still keep his side of the bargain. That's a covenant. Wow. Who would go into a covenant with, right? Who would want a covenant then? It doesn't seem right. And I'm trying to think, do we know any covenants that we use in society still? Are there any covenants that A doesn't have to do what they promised, but B still will keep his side of the deal? The only one I can think of is this, believe it or not, is marriage. Marriage is a covenant. Okay? Which means A and B. If A does not keep their side of the deal, B will keep their agreement. Now, often we think of marriage as a contract, right? We look at really marriage today as a contract. If you don't keep me happy, fulfilled, if I don't feel that sense wanted, contract's over, it's broken. It's not so much death until death do us part, but until you do something I don't like. And that's how marriage has come to be. But in God's eyes, it's not meant to be that way. It is a covenant. That's why be careful when you get into a marriage. Because it's an awesome agreement. Because I will keep my side of the bargain, the deal, the agreement, even if the other party doesn't. Wow. That's tough. That is tough. Anyway, so we'll go back to covenant. So God makes this covenant with Noah, which is this: I will not destroy the earth ever again by flood. Never again will I destroy the earth by flood. No matter what you do, no matter how disobedient you may be, no matter what sin you may commit, I will never flood the earth. It does not depend on your behavior, your conduct. Simply, I will not do that. All right. So right now, what do you think our relationship with God is? Our relationship with God, we who are baptized, is it a contract or is it a covenant? Covenant. That sounds like the right word, doesn't it? But what do we really think it is? What do we really think it is? Contract. Seriously, I think we operate in that mode of thinking. That we think, if as long as I keep the commandments, at least the big ones, God will be okay with me. But if I don't do these things, if I don't go to church, I don't keep the commandments, God is going to break the contract. That's what we think. I think so. And that's what we sort of preach. That's how we keep people in line. Because we told them, guess what? If you don't do those things, but God was still, really? Then why bother? We like contract. In fact, that's how the church operates sometimes too, doesn't it, really? Think about it. If you guys don't do this, guess what? You can't come up to the altar because the contract's broken. And even members of the church, we really should have a covenant relationship with the church. With your parish church should be a covenant, not a contract. So that if I don't leave because they have better donuts, say they're the church. I don't leave because I don't like the music anymore. I don't leave because I don't like the... No. It's a covenant. That this is we are. No matter what A may do, I keep my side of the deal. But it's tough, though, isn't it, though? In thinking in terms of covenant, because, well, what examples do we have it? Let me give you something to me that comes really, really close to a covenant. All right? The closest I can think what a covenant love is, and I'll give this example here. As you know, we go to the prison on Tuesdays, Deacon Bob and a few others that help them. It's usually every Tuesday. I try to go once a month. But one day a year, we don't go on a Tuesday, we go on Saturday. It's Holy Saturday. We have an Easter celebration, Easter Mass. And remember, the first time I went some years ago, Deacon Bob told me, make sure you're on time. Don't be late, he told me. We got to leave early. He said, because that is visiting day at the prison. So you get there late, that line is going to be long. You won't even hardly get through. Oh boy, I took it to heart, so I made sure I was on time. And so the first time I went, it was that Holy Saturday. Remember, it was still a bit chilly in the air. I think we left here about 8 o'clock. When we got there, it was about 30 people lined up already. It was an early morning fog as well. And a few things that caught my eye. One, so all the people lined up, they were all female. Except maybe for little children, it might have been a boy or two, but basically it was all female. I didn't see any men. I assumed some maybe their girlfriends or wives, maybe their children, and their moms. I didn't see any men. Anything that caught my eye was they were all sort of looking straight ahead or staring on the ground. There's really no one really talking. Might have been one or two sort of quietly talking, but basically they're just sort of very quiet, just staring straight ahead. We walked by, we greeted them, and they mumbled a greeting back. I imagine a sort of uncomfortable feeling, having to go to the prison and visit your perhaps son or husband or boyfriend. Anyway, with that background, let me share this lady's journal, whose son's in prison. It had been 4 months since I had seen my son. I had talked with him numerous times on the telephone, and we exchanged a few photos. Finally, he called me, and I told him what I knew he wanted to hear. "I'm coming to see you," I said. I arrived at the prison filled with anticipation and entered into a large reception area. I stood quiet at the end of a long line. The stream of other anxious visitors seemed to go on for miles. Soon I entered the small room where I underwent an uncomfortable physical search. Afterward, I grabbed my car keys and my roll of quarters, the two precious things I was allowed to bring into the meeting room. I walked down a hall that seemed to go on for a mile. Eventually, I entered a large room filled with well-used tables and chairs. On the left side of the room stood several vending machines that housed sandwiches, chips, candy, and soda. I sat at a table near the door and watched for my dear son's face to appear in the small window of a large metal door that separated us. And when I saw him, I stood up and smiled. My heart was pounding in my chest, and my mind spoke privately these words: "There's my little boy." My son stood behind the glass watching my every move. He was waiting patiently for the guard to let him come in to see me. He moved toward me as though I was his last chance to see me. I sprinted toward him, and we wrapped our arms around each other. My son pulled me close and dropped his head on my shoulder and buried his face in my chest. He immediately broke his stance, but I could feel his heart's every beat and a cry that poured out from his soul. And he said to me, "Ma, don't ever let me go." And I think to me that comes the closest of God's covenantal love to us. For this mother, when she saw her son, she didn't see a criminal. She did not see someone who committed a crime. She didn't see someone who was in prison. But she said, "There's my little boy." No matter what he might have done, he was still her son. And she could not stop loving him. And that's what God says to us. And unfortunately, we never really hear that or preach that. We think it's a contract. That I have to be good or God will stop loving me. When God sees you and I, He says, "There's my son, there's my daughter." It may be hard to accept, because I live on a contract with God in my behavior. I'm sure it is. And maybe you never experienced, maybe from our mothers, our fathers, our spouse, really this deep love. So this Lent, you think about that. That God has this undying love for me. And once we understand and appreciate that, we will want to love God in return. And may we say the same words of her son in prison. "Lord, don't ever let me go."